to say. Our next guest is one of the Brillantes. Stephen Strauss is currently lecturing at Princeton, where he's a visiting professor at the Woodrow Wilson School. He's advised governments on public policy issues all over the world. In 2011 to 12, he was an advanced leadership fellow at Harvard, but prior to Harvard, he had an extraordinary impact here in New York City, where he was the founding managing director of the Center for Economic Transformation in the New York City government under Bloomberg. Among many initiatives, he was at least partially responsible for the Applied Sciences NYC, which is the NYC Cornell Technion campus, also the General Assembly and Innovation Campus in Manhattan's Flatiron District, the 160 Varick Street Incubator, and all kinds of other fascinating and innovative ideas. Prior to that, he was with the World Economic Forum and McKinsey, and he's a big thinker, and he is somebody who likes to do a forest for the trees approach to policy and steer people in the right direction. He really believes that the way that we can initiate economic growth is by figuring out ways in which we can use our intelligence to expand our capabilities. And Stephen Strauss wrote a piece that caught my eye in USA Today recently, and it was called "The Clintons Have Done Enough Damage." And I thought it was a very provocative headline. I thought the substance was provocative as well. Stephen Strauss, professor, welcome to the Lisa Wexler Show today. Hi.
Oh, thank you. Hi, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm going to have to play that for my family.
Well, clearly you deserve it. You really do. So, Stephen, with your extraordinary background and your big picture view of things, tell us what you wrote in this op-ed about the Clintons.
Well, it's just that, I'm no fan of President-elect Trump, and I think he's going to be a worse president, but that a number of the criticisms of the Clintons were on point. And a number of things were, there was a famous comment from President Obama, don't do stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what the Clintons did in the end was stupid stuff. That private email server in their basement in Chappaqua was no place for government emails. I don't think they committed a crime, but it is kind of strange. I don't know of anyone who set up their own email server in their basement. Having done that, it would have been nice that they had actually archived all the emails properly before she left government.
Yeah, I saw that. You said that, yeah.
And, there was no reason not to have done so. I mean, she certainly had an adequate staff. The Clinton Foundation, fundraising on the side for that, from people in Saudi Arabia, Russia, etc., was just going to look odd, even if there was, no conflict of interest. There's an expression for lawyers. I believe you're an attorney. You can say this better than I can.
Yeah, the appearance of impropriety.
Right.
Yeah.
So, even if it wasn't a conflict of interest, it just had a weird appearance.
Sure.
And then, look, I think the Clinton Foundation does lots of excellent life-saving work in places like Haiti, Colombia, Peru, Africa, etc., but they actually seem to do very little in the United States. And, given she was running for president of the United States, not Secretary General of the United Nations, I can't help but think that if she'd focused more of her attention here, if the foundation had focused more of her attention here, they'd have had a deeper well of support. From 2013 to 2015, she gave speeches. Look, nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly legal. She collected $20 million. Lord love her. But on the other hand, that was like literally one speech a week, and I kept thinking, if instead of giving those paid speeches, she had been given free speeches at community colleges and high schools in the Midwest and the battleground states.
When I heard that she didn't visit Wisconsin once, I think you wrote it here, I almost fell over. And all the information that I've acquired, I had no idea.
Yeah. And, then there's Bill Clinton deciding to go drop in on the Attorney General of the United
States. That was worse than premeditated. That was pretty much taking the knife in her back of her campaign and sticking it in.
And, and again, you look at these people and it's like they're not dumb. Well, maybe they are dumb. I shouldn't say that based on the evidence. But, he's a brilliant man. He is a lawyer. For better or for worse, he's been involved in a huge number of, pieces of litigation, investigations.
Oh, scandals, of course.
Scandals, yeah. you would think he would have had the common sense to realize this is not a good thing to be doing.
Well, either that or he was unconsciously sabotaging her because the minute he went up to Loretta Lynch, somebody was going to find out it was going to be over.
Yeah, and and then that in turn trained the events that gave Comey a lot of leeway, liberty to decide to shape the message the way he wanted
Absolutely.
to.
He never would have been in charge. He shouldn't have been in charge.
Yeah.
He's not a prosecutor.
Right. But it just, Clinton literally created a situation where, Loretta Lynch was like either she was going to have to fall on the knife and insist she was going to stay involved or recuse herself.
Right. She had no choice.
Yeah. Well, you could argue that, look, a 15-minute meeting and there were security people present, but it was like...
There was so much heat on her, though.
Right. And why put her in that position?
Exactly.
And then there's the other item that, Hillary Clinton insisted on flying home most nights during the campaign instead of spending extra time campaigning in the States. Which, look, I like sleeping in my own bed also. On one level, I'm very sympathetic to it, but it's like you're running for president. It is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Well, so Stephen Strauss, and of course there's two messages there, and I did say this on the air throughout the campaign, which is, trust me because I have such good judgment. And yet, this whole email scandal, for nothing else, and again, I agree with you, I'm not sure at all it was criminal, but it belies the claim to being of good judgment. It does.
No, there's the judgment issue, and also, I think should have been in a better position to hammer Trump on his many conflicts of interest, which I think are far worse, if it hadn't been for the fact that she'd created this own aura, miasma, if you like, of conflict of interest around herself.
And having failed in that duty, and personally, I could cry about the fact that they say the count is up to almost $3 million, 3 million, votes, popular votes that Trump is behind by, and yet he will win because we are a country of states and not one country when it comes to the presidential election. What do you see? Stephen Strauss, may I assume that you're a Democrat or are you an unaffiliated? Yeah. Okay, you're a Democrat. So where does... If the Clintons do stay home, and I don't think that they can, I think it's been fascinating to see how Hillary Clinton has been around so much since she lost. I've actually been shocked by it, to tell you the truth. But assuming they don't run again, unless they run Chelsea for Nita Lowey's seat, who's going to emerge from the ashes to lead the Democratic Party?
I really have no idea. There's certainly... there are the various governors, Governor Cuomo in New York, but he has, his set of baggage around him. But he certainly, I think, has been trying to position himself as a moderate. Potentially some of the senators, but no, I mean, you're correct you're asking the right question. We should be starting to think about 2020, but I have to admit I haven't started yet. Today,
Jim Himes, who's our local congressman, became the leader of a new Democratic coalition of 54 congressmen, and he's getting some national press for calling for people to not vote their electoral college votes.
Well, again, you're the attorney, not me, but my own gut reaction is the electoral college will indeed return Donald Trump as president.
I don't see it any other way.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a protest vote, can I see some people peeling off so that his margin even becomes thinner? Possibly. And frankly, I think that wouldn't be a bad thing.
But he lies all the time, so he'll probably say it's a mandate. I mean, have you seen recently how he actually bald-faced says that his electoral college victory is one of the greatest ever? Are you kidding me? If 2 or 3 states had swung the other way, he would have lost.
I think it's about 100,000 votes the other way he'd have lost. But, well, in a sense, it was the greatest electoral victory of someone who lost by 3 million votes.
That I agree. That I will give you, Stephen. That's true. And I also don't see any prospect of changing the system fundamentally.
No. Particularly given the partisan atmosphere, and frankly, at the moment, the system tends to favor the Republicans. They have more strengths in sort of the smaller rural states.
Well, they do because they've articulated a much clearer message. And it seems to be more welcome in a lot of places. I like to see a loyal, strong opposition no matter who's in office. When the Democrats are in office, I want to see strong Republicans. And when the Republicans are in office, I want to see strong Democrats. I don't like one-party rule.
Well, at the moment, we have one-party rule, big time. As well, you well know, they control the Republicans control the Congress and the executive, and it'll be quite interesting seeing whether the GOP is willing to, hold Trump to account, investigate him to the extent it's going to be needed.
Well, you're somebody who comes out of the public policy world, the Bloomberg administration. If you were in a position now of policy for the federal government, how would you handle all of these potential conflicts of interest? We know that the president seems to be somebody who, by law, can get around some of these things in terms of divesting himself of business interests. But as a practical matter, how would you handle it? What would you recommend?
If I were advising Trump, I'm not sure what advice I would give. It's a deeply weird situation in the sense that, his business, at least as far as anyone can tell, is his brand. I'm not sure if I were advising Trump, because I don't think he would take my advice. If I were advising the Congress and they were really going to seriously tackle this issue, I would demand that, look, you're going to be publishing your tax returns, you're going to be publishing audited financials for the Trump organization. There needs to be a real separation between you and the Trump organization. There are countries where the Trump organization simply no longer should be allowed to do business.
Really?
To give the Clintons their credit, they were discussing the idea that assuming she was elected, the foundation would no longer raise money in certain foreign countries, which I think, by the way, was the right approach for them. And I don't see why you wouldn't impose the same thing on Donald Trump and say, look, you became president, therefore you're not going to be negotiating deals with the Saudi Arabian government for your private business.
I don't know how that will fly.
I don't know. I don't
think
the Republicans are going to ask my advice on that issue.
No, and he's appointing basically one CEO after another to his cabinet, and they're all about trade and opportunity and business, and they don't like to see barriers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, though, because, one, those guys are subject to the conflict of interest rules. All of them, including the president, are subject to the bribery laws. So he doesn't get around that. So it will be very interesting, and I'm not sure, frankly, some of the people around him are going to be quite that willing to sign off on things.
Are you somebody, in writing this piece and talking about the mistakes that Hillary Clinton made, are you in touch with insiders in the Clinton campaign who are wringing their hands now with a very bad case of the woulda, coulda, shouldas?
No, not particularly. I mean, there are few people I know casually. I know who were devastated by this. Devastated, frankly, because they think it's going to be terrible for the country. Devastated for themselves because, frankly, they'd put 6 months or a year into this. But I don't think there's any uniform view within her camp. I think for some of them, it's, I think there was I suspect you saw this in the papers. There was the talk up at Harvard, which I did not get to, so I only saw the newspaper accounts, where the Clinton folks accused the Trump folks of running a very dirty campaign. I think there are other folks in the Clinton camp who, feel that they really had a horrible headwind from Comey from the Russian interference. Frankly, I think there are some people in the Clinton camp that probably agree with what I put in this article, that a lot of this was self-inflicted wounds. Yeah,
self-inflicted wounds, and they wouldn't have been wounds had she won, right? I mean, it all goes the glory to the winner.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, a slight difference in all of this, and people would have been talking about how she got a very respectable victory with 3 million popular votes.
Yes, exactly.
And the narrative, it could have just been so much different, but that's not the way it worked out.
Do you believe at all that there's any chance that there's a reality that our votes were hacked?
Yeah, I would hesitate to call anything impossible in 2016. It's been that kind of a year. But, as was commented by a number of people, you can't just hack the votes in the U.S.
Exactly.
It's, 50 different states.
Right.
Even within many of the states, it's separate voting systems in different parts of the states.
And I hope it stays that way. I hope the last thing we do is create some uniformity.
Yeah, so it's very hard to do. Do I think there may be an argument that in some states Republican voter suppression might have flipped the campaign. I think literally Wisconsin, it was 20,000 votes.
Yeah, about 27,000. Yeah.
And, certainly the Republicans were doing everything they could to discourage, voting in minority neighborhoods, voting in predominantly Democratic neighborhoods. I think that might have had an impact on the election. But, do I think there was sort of the Russians were going in and flipping the vote counters in, rural Michigan? No.
Stephen Strauss, one other thing. What are you teaching right now in Princeton?
This semester it was public sector management in the age of digital technology, and then next semester I teach urban economics and a general course in management in the public sector.
Well, good luck. I hope that Princeton doesn't have any trigger warnings or safe spaces.
It's a lovely school.
I really hope that they create sturdy young people who are able to withstand, the losses and their unhappy resolutions of things that they thought were going to go the other way. I know my daughter's at NYU, and they were practically apoplectic, and I said, please, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Stand up straight. So
well, I'm actually very proud of my class. Sorry, one quick anecdote. I happened to be teaching Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., and Tuesday night had been the election. And I have to say, every student showed up.
Good.
They were mainly they were depressed. It is a sort of left-wing
Sure.
group, but it was like, elections come and go.
That's
life
right.
goes on.
That's right. So, in other words, you were not the Yale econ professor who only invited kids to come if it would improve their grade. That's a true story at Yale.
No. I just said, hi, we're having a regular class, guys.
That's good. Stephen Strauss, thanks very much for your writing, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure.
Bye-bye.